How's it going, everyone? Kellen Rec here. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about bitrate. Whoa, let's keep the bitrate of this video actually decent enough so you can see. That's better. Intro. So a couple weeks ago I had a question down in the comments, what is bitrate? And I just wanted to go over in a very basic sense what bitrate is for you. So bitrate is the amount of data that's encoded per second in a video. Now, what does that all mean? Well, in a very basic sense, the higher the bitrate of your video, the higher the quality of your video. On the alternative side, the higher the bitrate, the larger the file size of your video. Now, it's important to understand that resolution is different from bitrate. Resolution is the pixel size of your video. So if you have something that's 1920 by 1080, that is the resolution of your video. A 1920 by 1080 HD video can have different bit rates. So if we take two examples of an HD video, 1920 by 1080, on one side we can have a low bit rate, meaning the quality is lesser, it's more compressed. On the other side we can have a high bit rate, meaning we have a higher quality, a larger file size but a higher quality, more data being encoded per second as the video plays. Not all HD cameras shoot at the same bit rate. This is why a GoPro might look different from an iPhone video, that might look different from a DSLR, that might look different from a cinema camera. They all shoot 1920 by 1080 HD, but at different bit rates, meaning that they're putting out different amounts of data per second as they shoot. There are a few other factors that affect why these different cameras look a different way, sensor sizes amongst other things, but the bit rate is a large factor in this. Bit rate is measured in megabits per second. When you're watching a video on YouTube, 1080p, 24 frames per second, the average bit rate that you're going to be watching is 8 megabits per second. As you start to look at 4K or higher frame rate files, the bit rate's going to jump up a little bit, somewhere in the 20s. You can upload a high bitrate video to YouTube and it'll adjust it for each setting of the resolutions that you're playing back at. So if you're playing back at 320p on a very slow internet connection, it's going to have a bitrate or a low bitrate version of the video for you, playing at about 0.7 megabits per second. YouTube will do all that encoding for you, but you generally want to upload your highest bitrate file to YouTube. They'll then encode for the various sizes. Now, a way to compare these YouTube videos playing at 8 megabits per second, when you're watching a DVD, it generally is a video that's encoded somewhere between 4 and 8 megabits per second. When you're watching a Blu-ray, it's generally encoded somewhere between 24 and 40 megabits per second. So a lot higher quality on those Blu-rays. Now again, you can see some higher bitrate files online, of course. Hulu and Netflix are pushing the limits there, but this is where we're moving. As the internet gets better, we can upload higher bitrate content and play it back at a faster speed. One thing that's important to understand is when you're encoding a file, there's a difference between variable bitrate and constant bitrate. When you're exporting your videos out of Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro or whatever you're using, you can choose what you want. So the difference is, if we're going to export a video with a constant bitrate of 10 megabits per second, the entire video will be 10 megabits per second throughout, no questions, no matter what's playing. There's a much more efficient form, which is variable bitrate. If we say we have a variable bitrate that'll average about 10 megabits per second with a max of 12 megabits per second, as the video is encoding and exporting, it's going to adjust that bitrate based on what's on the screen. So if a chunk of your video is just a black screen or not much motion happening, it's going to use less data to encode those frames of the video, meaning that you have a much more efficient file size. It can compress to be a little bit smaller because the whole video is not using that full 10 megabits per second. So I know this was a very quick overview on bitrate, but I wanted to give you that basic understanding that the higher the bitrate, the higher the quality of your video, but also the larger the file size, which is why some cameras that can record at really high bit rates need different forms of SD cards or CFast cards to actually record the video. Like if you took a Canon 1DX and were shooting 4K, that's recording to a codec called Motion JPEG. That's a very heavy codec and uses a very high bitrate to capture. So you need a CFast card to record this. These are expensive and they're very heavy duty cards for your camera. A standard SD card won't be able to capture that much data at once, at one time. So this is why it's important to understand that if you want that higher quality, that bigger bit rate, you need much larger recording devices, much larger file sizes. You need to be prepared for that, and much slower upload speeds if you're going to toss it on YouTube or throw it onto Dropbox to send a file. So again, just to review, the larger the bit rate, the better the quality, but the larger the file size. The lower the bit rate, the more compressed. You get a much easier file to transfer around and store, but you're going to lose a little bit of quality. So I hope this gave you a very basic understanding of bitrate. I didn't want to dive too deep, but I want you to just grasp what the meaning is behind bitrate and let you know exactly what it is. So thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Let me know any questions that you have about bitrate or anything else. I'd like to answer your questions in future videos. If you're enjoying all of these videos and you want to become a better filmmaker and photographer, go ahead and subscribe, ring the little bell so you see all of my uploads, and we'll check you back in the next one. Thanks, guys.